Hola a todos chicos, ¿cómo están? El día de hoy estamos frente a una oportunidad extraordinaria porque estoy frente a mi mentor, Darren Weeks. Él es una persona que me ha enseñado a invertir, me ha enseñado todo lo que sé de educación financiera y no solamente porque es mi mentor, es una persona que conocí hace 5 años y yo estoy seguro que te puede ayudar a ti tanto como lo ha hecho conmigo. Darren Weeks es canadiense, es dueño de más de 5,000 propiedades, es un billonario. Así que hasta en este momento una pregunta. ¿Cuántas veces has aprendido directamente de una persona billonaria, alguien que tiene los resultados? Darren Weeks ha marcado y ha trascendido las fronteras en el mundo sobre la educación financiera, la libertad financiera, toda la parte de las inversiones. Fue asesor de Robert Kiyosaki. Para mí es un honor estar frente a Darren Weeks. ¿Te podrías presentar con la comunidad?
Thank you for the
Hello,
opportunity.
Darren.
Good to see you. Yeah, my name is Darren Weeks. I am Canadian, and I moved to Mexico in 2018 full time because I fell in love with the entrepreneurs, the culture, the food. But as a Canadian, I always wanted to be rich as a young boy. And I went to university, I got a business degree, but I realized I wasn't going to be rich working for somebody else. So when I read this book in 2001, it changed my life completely. And I started to teach financial seminars, financial education, using Robert Kiyosaki's principles. And that has opened so many doors. I've met entrepreneurs all over the world. I've been very honored and blessed to have Robert speak for me all over the world, including Mexico. And I just have it in my blood that I can't retire. I just really enjoy teaching financial education.
Darren es una persona extraordinaria, como ya te pudiste dar cuenta, toda su trayectoria has cambiado la vida de muchísimas personas en el mundo. ¿Cuál ha sido la historia más grande que te ha dejado una huella?
I really don't think about it too often. Obviously, Robert changed my life, and I've heard a million people say to Robert, "Oh, I read your book; it changed my life." I just am very happy if anybody comes to an event, takes action, and starts to move forward. So I don't really have one specific story, but even Antonio. I mean, I met him 5 years ago, and as a young man that would listen and then implement things that I suggested, it's very honoring when somebody does that. So I have a lot of people that have taken action, and just by taking small, simple steps, it makes me very happy.
Y Robert Kiyosaki, sabemos todos la trayectoria increíble que tiene por todo el mundo. ¿Cuál fue la influencia que tuvo Robert Kiyosaki en tu vida?
So many. I studied with him for almost 20 years. I went to so many seminars that I paid $5,000 to attend. There's so many lessons. One of them though, is just the ability to realize that your mind is your greatest asset. And in school, I had such a dislike for school because I didn't do very well the way that they teach. You know, listen to a teacher, read a book, and then you've got to take a test. And I just wasn't good at that. So what Robert taught me was everybody has different ways to learn. And if you focus on the ways you're good at learning, you can succeed. And also that, my mind is my greatest asset. So it doesn't matter if I failed calculus or I didn't do very well at school. He gave me the belief that I can be as big as I want. So nobody else in my life has done that prior to reading this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, to really realize, okay, you know what? We're all equal. We all have the same abilities. And it's what you want to do with your mindset that matters. So he gave me really the belief, and school and society, they certainly didn't. They basically told me to get a job.
Algo que a mí realmente me ha gustado y siempre he querido preguntar, y yo sé que tantas personas allá afuera algunas veces piensan que las personas exitosas son personas que vienen de familias ricas, personas que tenían la vida acomodada. Y la siguiente pregunta que te quiero hacer, Darren, es, en tu trayectoria, si hubieras podido hacer algo diferente, ¿qué hubiera sido?
How much time do I have? Obviously, there's so many things that an entrepreneur is going to do that's a mistake. But the number one thing is what I learned from Robert Kiyosaki was it's okay to make mistakes. Of course, every day I do things that are wrong. But when I was in school as a young boy, I felt stupid because I didn't do very well in school. And I would get a test back and, you would fail. And it was like they were calling me stupid or they're saying you're dumb. So as an entrepreneur, you have to realize you're going to make mistakes. And I can always look back and say, how would I do things differently? Obviously, with experience, I think now in Mexico, when I raise money, my investments are stronger. The strategies are better just because of experience, but we're all going to make mistakes, and just you got to move on and realize as an entrepreneur that's going to happen.
Wow. Y es interesante lo que platica de la escuela y es lo que les comentaba. dentro de la cultura, no solamente en México, en el mundo, se dice que tú tienes que ser exitoso si vas a una buena escuela, tienes buenas calificaciones. Así que, Darren, me gustaría preguntarte, ¿qué hay más allá del dinero?
Time freedom. To me, it's all about time freedom. Um, Also, I guess not having a boss, and it's been so many years that I haven't had a boss that I don't really think about it anymore. But the first time I had that freedom of not having to go to an office, it was addicting, and I said I'm never going back. So I worked for maybe 2 years in my life for a boss, and once I found that freedom, I said I'm never going back.
Para mí, él es una persona que representa a un mentor que es congruente con sus resultados y saber qué es lo que hay más allá del dinero, creo que puede ser algo bastante importante para todos. Así que, Darren, si tuvieras que empezar de cero, sin tus recursos, y tuvieras que iniciar nuevamente tu camino a la libertad financiera, ¿cómo lo harías?
It's interesting. I had a great marketing director in Canada. His name was David DeBow. And one day I'm in Kamloops, it's a small city in British Columbia. And he goes, tomorrow we're going to go to the studio. We're going to record something. I said, well, okay, tell me so I can think about it before I go to bed. He goes, no, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to ask you when we're at the studio. And it was a similar question. He said, if you had nothing, you had no network, you had nothing, and you moved to a brand new city, how would you survive? And to me, the biggest thing is learning communication skills. Communication skills is going to allow you to sell a product. And I went to university and I took accounting. I didn't learn how to sell a product. My first business, I was selling a Canadian Inuit art product, and I didn't know how to sell very well. So if there's one thing I would suggest to everybody, it's to learn communication skills, interpersonal skills that allows you to sell something to generate revenue.
¿Y alguna vez te ha dado miedo perderlo todo? ¿Perder todo lo que has construido?
No,
Why?
I don't worry about things like that. Again, it goes back to COVID, for instance, or 2008, the financial crisis. A lot of people lost everything. And what I focus on is to teach people awareness of different skills that you need. And like I just mentioned, if you have communication skills, the government or society can never take those skills away.
Mhm.
So even in COVID, the richest people got richer because, in my opinion, they had skills. They have a skill set that is going to allow you to make money no matter what happens. So I don't worry about it. I can start again tomorrow if I have to with nothing, and it doesn't bother me at all if I lost everything. But I won't lose everything because I've structured things properly.
Interesante. Como te lo comentaba, es un honor porque estás recibiendo oro directamente de un mentor. Y yo he escuchado que en el mundo a Darren Weeks se le conoce como el Padre Rico Canadiense. ¿En algún momento de tu vida tú te sentiste atrapado financieramente?
I don't think in my life I've ever felt financially trapped. Again, ever since I was 6, I had the mindset I wanted to be rich. And even in university, like I had a brand new car. I saved for it. I went to Hawaii just because I worked hard. So I just always realized that if I thought I was going to be into a financial situation that wasn't great, I would just work my way out of it. So I don't think I've ever felt financially trapped in my life.
¿Cuál ha sido tu reto más grande al enseñar a las personas a construir su libertad financiera?
When it comes to investments, the biggest challenge is what is on your mind is the enormity of what you're doing when you ask somebody to invest in your projects. What you have to realize that when you have somebody invest with you, you're taking their money, their hard-earned money that they've worked for, sometimes for many, many years. So you have to take that responsibility with a lot of consideration. So that's the biggest thing when it comes to investments. When it comes to people's financial education, financial freedom, all I really think I am is somebody who can allow you to start thinking differently. And that's what, again, what Robert Kiyosaki did for me. He made me think different. And if somebody leaves one of my events and they start to think differently and they can do it, that makes me very happy.
Para mí, lo que me ha dejado tener un mentor es ahorrar tiempo. Lo que una persona exitosa que ya tiene los resultados te puede enseñar a ti, te va a ahorrar tiempo. Recuerda que cuando tú compras mentoría y pagas mentoría, estás ahorrando tiempo de una persona que ya tiene los resultados. Así que, Darren, si tuvieras que enseñar una lección sobre dinero y éxito, ¿cuál sería?
It's really simple. It's just taking action. I've said this many, many times, but most people are lazy. Most people will never read a book. Most people will never go to an event. Most people will never do just the basic little things that I would suggest, for instance, or Robert Kiyosaki. So what I find is if you want to become successful, just do the little things day by day that nobody else will do. It's amazing how most people are just comfortable, they're lazy, they complain a lot, but they don't take any action. So if you want to get ahead, just small little incremental steps each day. In a year, you'll be a mile ahead of all of your friends and relatives.
¿Qué le dirías a todas esas personas que no creen que sea posible alcanzar su libertad financiera?
Well, again, it all goes back to believing or not. If the person thinks they're going to be poor forever, they're absolutely correct. Right? That's right. That's what you think. That's what you're going to believe. But if you start to think a little bit differently, and it doesn't happen in 5 minutes, and that's what I like about Robert, the Rich Dad book, for instance. People come to my events in 3 hours, their context is totally shifted. So the very first thing is the belief. If you believe you're going to be poor, no matter what I say, I can't change it. So what I love about what I do is, again, I only deal with people that want to change because they come to an event and they give me their time. But people have to change the mindset if they want to change the situation. There's nothing,
Wow.
there's no secret sauce. If they don't change, nothing's going to change.
Wow. Y dentro de tu trayectoria, Darren, ¿ha habido momentos en los que tú te has cuestionado si, o en algún momento te cuestionaste si valía la pena seguir?
Every single time I do an event, for me, it's just my passion. And again, it's in my blood. Never in a million years when I was young did I think I wanted to be a teacher. But doing what I do now, the reason I love it so much is my events are generally free and I don't force anybody to come to the events. So for me, it's always a great pleasure when somebody gives me their time and their attention and they come to one of my events. So it's kind of addicting when you see somebody come to an event and after an hour or two, you can see the light bulb go off in their head and they're thinking a little bit differently. And if I can just inspire them to take a little bit of action, I think I've done my job. But again, it's very addicting dealing with positive people that want to get better.
Una persona que ha ayudado a tanta gente a alcanzar su libertad financiera, me gustaría hacer una pregunta personal, Darren. ¿Qué has aprendido sobre ti mismo al enseñar a las personas a construir su libertad?
So as I get a little bit older, I learned that I'm pretty lazy. Every day there's lessons that you learn, but I'm just not the kind of person that really reflects on other successes or what other people do. I just get up every day and just do those little things I just mentioned in the last question. Just do those little incremental things. But I'm human, I procrastinate. I don't go to the gym as much as I want. I get a little bit lazier as I have more money. I don't need to do things. That's what my answer is for that question.
Y el día de hoy, ¿tú te consideras una persona diferente después de haber aprendido eso?
Yeah, I mean, again, every day, I think as a person, I want to continue to grow. But like I just mentioned, sometimes I'm lazier than I used to be. But every single day, it's a quest I have to always try to have my mindset grow, my contexto get bigger, to
Sí.
expand. There's always new ways to do business, new ways to think. Today, before we did this session, I learned a lot from you guys, and you're all very young. So every day I'm looking at a different context and trying to learn and grow.
Interesante. En mi trayectoria como experto en recaudación de capital, habiendo aprendido del mejor del mundo, que fue asesor de Robert Kiyosaki en el levantamiento de capital, para mí algo que en algún momento me voló la cabeza fue leer este libro, El cuadrante de flujo de dinero. De verdad, este libro cambió mi vida por completo. Aquí entendí realmente por qué las personas ricas valoran su tiempo, por qué las personas no colocan su tiempo por dinero. Y una pregunta que me gustaría hacerte, Darren, dentro del cuadrante de flujo de efectivo, ¿cuál es la lección que te gustaría darle a las personas?
Well, to me, and I could talk for an hour just on this book, but I want to focus on the I quadrant. And most people think the I quadrant is for them to invest their money into investments. And that's one portion of it. But in my opinion, 99% of Mexicans, Canadians, the population, they don't get access to the best investments. So they also need somebody like me that puts together hundreds of investors into deals, because the bigger the deal, the bigger the return you're typically going to get. I mean, all over Mexico City, there's massive apartment buildings, condos. I would rather own one of those than just a small house. I'm probably going to get a better return. But most people don't have the money to buy a grand property. So the hardest part about the quadrants is to be the person in the I quadrant that actually raises the capital. So I like to raise the capital, but I need hundreds of investors to put all that money together to buy one of these big deals so we all get good returns. So my point is, most people don't realize that raising capital is the hardest part of all the four quadrants. Very few people are good at raising capital. And again, that's why I was very impressed with you. You came to my events for years. I knew you were raising capital. And I also knew that it was competing with what I do, but I don't care. There's enough for everybody. There's an abundance for my mentality. Sí. And the I quadrant is very, very difficult. So if you're able to raise capital, it's a skill set very few people have.
Yo me he dado cuenta alrededor de estos años, recaudando capital, ayudando a muchas personas en sus objetivos de la libertad financiera a través de excelentes oportunidades de inversión que les pudieran brindar a las personas la posibilidad de construir su libertad. Y me gustaría hacerte una pregunta muy específica, Darren. Para ti, ¿qué es ser un inversionista?
That's a great question. To be an investor has many different considerations. I think, first of all, if you want to be an investor, you need to invest in personal development. The reason I love Robert so much is he created a tool called the cash flow game. And that's really the business I had. Was I would do seminars and I would actually have people play a game called cash flow. And it would take you to invest your time to come to my event and play the game. And then you would also have to invest your energy and your mind to want to play a game on how to make money. And the reason I stress the essence of personal development is because they don't teach financial investment education in school, most people are going to lose their money because we have no education. So the first thing you need to invest in is yourself with education. And whether it was in Canada or in Mexico, our first and foremost mission is always financial education before we would say invest with us. So the first thing you need to do is invest in yourself and learn about how money actually works before you put it into real investments.
Yo creo que los inversionistas genuinamente son las personas que son el motor de cualquier economía, porque ponen a trabajar dinero para crear negocios exitosos y esos negocios exitosos cuando crecen brindan empleo a las personas, se puede expandir la mayor cantidad de productos y servicios que generan esas empresas solamente porque alguien decidió invertir en un gran proyecto. Y Darren, al día de hoy hay muchas personas que no saben invertir y desconfían en ocasiones de las oportunidades de inversión. Yo sé que tú te especializas en oportunidades inmobiliarias. ¿Qué es lo que le podrías decir desde tu experiencia a todas esas personas?
Well, my personal experience was I realized when I was younger that rich people typically own businesses and real estate. And in 2008, I had some extra money and I was started to invest in the stock market. And the reason was I had about 15 properties at the time, but I just disliked managing properties and managing the tenants. So I put money into the stock markets. And in 2008, when the financial crisis occurred, I lost all my money. So it was a good lesson for me. And then again, just because of people that I met, one of my other mentors is Ken McElroy, who's a Rich Dad advisor.
Oh, Ken McElroy.
What I started to realize is I don't have to get my hands dirty managing properties and buying them. I can invest my hard-earned money with a professional. But the reason I love real estate compared to the stocks is I want to own and control my investments.
Wow.
So with the stocks, I didn't really control anything. When the market crashed, companies would do things that they wanted to do. With real estate, I can own and control it. So that's a big difference to me. So I love real estate because I can own it, control it. I have title to it. Nobody can steal it. So real estate to me is the number one thing that I invest in. And it's just because some of the lessons I've learned over the years.
Y me gustaría preguntarte, Darren, siendo una persona libre financieramente, ¿por qué elegiste México para continuar con los negocios?
Yeah, it's amazing. Again, just because I read this book in 2001, my life changed so much. Now, I want to say something. My very first seminar, I had a room for 60 people, but only 4 people showed up. But, I kept going. And over the years, eventually, I met Robert, and he asked me to do more and more with his organization to teach financial education, because that's the mission of his book. His mission is to basically increase the financial education for the entire world. So he asked me to start teaching entrepreneurs all over the world. And one of the first stops was Mexico. So in about 2014, I came to Mexico to teach entrepreneurship.
Wow.
Now, as a Canadian, I've been here many times, but only to beach towns, in the winter. But when I came to Mexico City, Hermosillo, Monterrey, Guadalajara to teach entrepreneurs, it allowed me to realize the wonderful culture that Mexico has, the beautiful people, amazing food, and of course, the clima. So eventually I did want to move somewhere warmer, and I chose Cabo San Lucas. And it's because he asked me to teach entrepreneurship in Mexico, all over the world, and I chose Mexico.
Wow. Mira, es importante porque una persona que podría estar en cualquier lugar del mundo decidió el día de hoy estar en México, seguir continuando su trayectoria en México y ayudar cada vez a más personas a construir sus objetivos financieros. Algo que marca mucho la diferencia y que he aprendido en los últimos años es tener la capacidad de poder ayudar a más personas. Y en este sentido, para mí, Darren es esa persona que puede ayudar a otras personas a través de sus excelentes oportunidades de inversión. Yo me he dado cuenta que existen pocas personas en el mundo que logran acceder a las oportunidades exclusivas en el mundo. Y tener cercanía con una persona que logra este tipo de resultados, para mí es lo más importante, porque hacen un trabajo detrás de cámaras, hacen un trabajo haciendo una diligencia de vida, investigando oportunidades y creando nuevas oportunidades en el mercado. Así que yo sé que la trayectoria que tiene Darren en México no solamente es ayudar a más personas, él es un empresario, él crea empresas, adquiere empresas, con el objetivo también de ayudar a otras personas a que logren su libertad financiera, ese sueño increíble de tantas personas en el mundo. Así que, Darren, yo sé que en México tú tienes varios negocios y me gustaría preguntarte, ¿cuál fue el objetivo y el por qué adquiriste PM2?
There's a lot of factors. First and foremost is a partner. So my partner Oscar, I've known him since 2014. I started to invest with him since 2014. And when I first moved to Mexico and started to raise money, I invested a lot more money with him and his projects. So when he approached me about PM2 back during COVID, I was very interested for a number of reasons. But number one, you can reach more customers just because of the internet. And number two, it's regulated by the banking commission. So those are two big factors. I guess the third one was, as well as I mentioned earlier with the cash flow quadrant book, the I quadrant, the best deals are usually only for the rich. But with Pimidos, we allow people to invest for as low as 1,000 pesos. So it really equals the playing field. Whereas in the past, the best deals were always only available to the rich. So those are three things I think are very important that I considered.
Y me gustaría preguntarte, Darren, en ese proceso de adquirir PM2, ¿en algún momento tuviste dudas?
I mean, I had a lot of questions, obviously. We negotiated for over a year because I had so many questions. Because I also have shareholders, and my shareholders in Freedom Investment Club would then automatically own part of PM2. So there was a lot of considerations. It wasn't just me that was affected. It was literally hundreds of investors. So again, it's called due diligence. You have to ask a lot of questions.
Sí.
We took our time with our professional team to ask those questions and verify. There's an important saying in investments or buying something: you trust, but you have to verify. So that took some time. But not a lot of doubts. I knew Oscar for 10 years basically, and he's a great guy.
A mí me hace el sentido de que seas propietario de esa empresa que le promueve oportunidades de inversión a las personas, porque realmente lo haces congruentemente. Para mí es importante. Y Darren, hay muchísimas oportunidades de inversión en todos lados, en cualquier lugar. Cualquier persona quiere ofrecer oportunidades de inversión con rendimientos altos, altísimos. ¿Cómo es que PM2 compite directamente con esas empresas y por qué es mejor?
Again, the number one thing in investing is I would ask this question. If somebody's going to ask me to invest with them, the first question is, have you done this before? And then I would say successfully. And the next question is, how many times? So in Canada, I mentioned earlier, Ken McElroy, a rich dad advisor. When I met Ken, he owned 4,000 properties. Okay. So I knew him for many years. He's never lost a penny for his investors. So when I had the opportunity to raise money in Canada to buy US apartments when the market crashed in 2008, 9, 10, he already had a great track record. Same with PM2. A lot of the deals that we do, the company that we're investing in, they've done 12,000, I call them flips. They buy a house, they renovate it, and they sell it. So 12,000 times they've done this time and time again. And I've had my personal money in that for 10 years. So I always ask again, the question is, have you done this before? What's your track record? That's way more important than somebody just saying, I'm going to give you a high return, or giving you a brochure that's glossy and looks really good. I always look at the track record. I don't think somebody who's done something successfully for 20 years is going to all of a sudden fail or steal your money.
Eso para mí es muy importante porque allá afuera hay tantas personas que temen colocar su dinero en oportunidades y yo me he dado cuenta que uno de los principales errores es que las personas en ocasiones confían en la palabra de una persona que los invita a invertir y ni siquiera son inversionistas. Para mí, una de las razones más importantes del por qué las personas pierden su dinero es por esta razón, porque no saben evaluar oportunidades de inversión y en ocasiones escuchan opiniones de otras personas que tampoco lo saben hacer. También he conocido personas que creen saberlo todo y en ocasiones esas personas se convierten también en apostadores sin resultados. Y que mi mentor, Darren Weeks, te comparta a ti esas claves de éxito, de cómo es que hace sentido PM2 frente a todas las oportunidades que existen en México, en nuestro país, realmente es oro molido. Uno de los secretos que pocas personas en ocasiones entienden es que la libertad financiera es posible conseguirla partiendo de construir ingresos pasivos. ¿A cuántos de ustedes les gustaría aprender cómo tú podrías conseguir ingresos pasivos? ¿Cómo tú podrías seguir manteniendo tu calidad de vida, pero ahora teniendo ingresos pasivos que provienen directamente de tus inversiones? Darren, para ti, ¿qué es lo más importante de construir un ingreso pasivo?
The most important thing when you consider starting investing and creating passive income is the first peso. It's always the most difficult because what it takes is a mindset shift. So, for instance, what I teach our team is to talk to individuals that may need to invest to create that passive income so they can meet their goals, whether it's to retire at a certain age, to have a second home, or to put their kids through school. If you want passive income and you know how much you need, you've got to set a goal. So at that point, you have to make a decision. Are you going to complete that goal or not? And if you're starting at zero, the hardest thing is to start. So that first peso of passive income means you're on the right track. But what I want to focus on is if you have a goal and you want to reach it, then you have to work backwards and say, okay, I have to sacrifice. You don't make passive income without sacrificing. So how much do I have to sacrifice? And the younger you are, the lower the amount because you've got time to grow. The older you are, you have less time for your money to compound. So first of all, start. And if you've already started, now what you want to start to search for is deals that you can get much better returns. So in my opinion, PM2 has great returns. And because it's a fintech, we also have amazing tax incentives by the government, which allows us to pay virtually 0% in tax.
Y hay otra clave de éxito, y esa clave de éxito muy pocas personas lo saben utilizar, y me refiero al interés compuesto. Alguna vez yo escuché de Albert Einstein que decía que el interés compuesto era la octava maravilla del mundo. Así que, Darren, ¿cuál es tu opinión sobre el interés compuesto?
Well, in Canada, the United States, compound interest to me, it's not really a big deal because the returns in Canada, the United States, Western Europe are generally very low. People are happy with 8%, 9%. The reason I love Mexico, and I've been a huge promoter of Mexico for many, many years, I believe in Mexico more than most Mexicans. And one of the main reasons is banks. And I don't like banks. They're not really my friend because they don't help entrepreneurs. Although if I want to get a mortgage to buy real estate, then I love banks. But generally speaking, banks in Mexico, you're going to charge very high interest rates.
Sí.
Okay? So what I do is rather than charge those high interest rates for entrepreneurs, I would rather lower the interest rate, give you something decent, maybe 20%, then find investors that will give me money and I pay them 15%. And 15% is a lot of a return. You don't see those returns in Canada, the United States very often. So now when you compound 15% interest, your money doubles much, much sooner than it would in a typical Canadian or American deal.
Claro.
So research compound interest, but you have an advantage here. And again, with the fintech, the return you're getting, it's virtually tax-free. So your money grows even more. So compound interest in Mexico is a phenomenal opportunity.
Claro, es una gran oportunidad el interés compuesto y me hace todo el sentido cómo tus ingresos se pueden multiplicar de una forma extraordinaria. Mira, yo sé que hay muchísimas personas en este momento que ya están súper emocionadas con todo lo que te comparte Darren, todo ese mindset, cómo está cambiando tu mentalidad en este momento, pero quizá hasta este punto de esa entrevista dirás, ok, ya me quedó claro que tengo que invertir, ya me quedó claro cómo es que una persona extraordinaria piensa para generar sus inversiones, el interés compuesto, ingresos pasivos. La pregunta ahora es, ¿cómo tú en este momento puedes acceder a excelentes oportunidades de inversión, como las oportunidades donde accede Darren? Así que, Darren, sabemos que PM2 es una oportunidad que buscas impulsar para darle la oportunidad a todas las personas de que sean inversionistas. ¿Cómo es que pueden acceder a ella?
Well, again, the beautiful thing about the Mexican government, and I say this with sincerity, Mexico is much more advanced than Canada when it comes to the fintech space. It equals the playing field. Many, many years ago, somebody, a stockbroker, asked me if I wanted to invest in Facebook before it was public. So obviously, it was a great opportunity. When they
Claro,
found out that my address was in Canada, they said, "Oh, you can't qualify," because this was an American stockbroker.
sí.
So my friend told me to phone him. So what I'm trying to get at is the best deals are not typically given to the average person. The fintech allows everybody in Mexico to invest in some great deals for such a low amount of money, 1,000 pesos, literally. So that's the number one benefit to allowing everybody in Mexico to be at a level playing field to get good returns in safe real estate investments.
Increíble, te lo está comentando una persona que ya tiene los resultados. Yo creo que estas son de esas pocas oportunidades valiosas para la gente, porque a Darren lo van a seguir invitando a oportunidades increíbles, pero Darren en este momento está dándote la oportunidad a ti de poder ser parte de estas oportunidades en donde Darren coloca su propio dinero. Esas oportunidades exclusivas que están evaluadas, que están formando una diferencia para las personas que están buscando construir su libertad financiera. Así que ya lo sabes, chicos. Realmente la experiencia que has vivido el día de hoy ha sido extraordinaria y me gustaría despedirme, Darren, pidiéndote si pudieras darle a las personas algún comentario adicional. ¿Qué te encantaría dar como comentario final para las personas?
I think one of the big advantages that PM2 has compared to other real estate fintechs is our management team, our executive team, people with experience. And what I also think that we do differently than anybody else in Mexico is we want to create a relationship with our customers. It's very easy to go online and to invest, but what we want to do is make sure that if you do that or come across PM2, you can be assured that you can have a phone call, a Zoom, or an in-person meeting to actually talk to somebody like Antonio or his team. Um, Relationships are the key to business. And what I want to do is have people with a very, very long-term relationship with us. We want you to be our trusted source. But at the same time, we want you to come to events. You know, we have a wine and cheese event very
Claro,
often in different cities in Mexico. Once a year, we have the Investor Summit, which you're allowed to come to if you're an investor. Because we at
sí,
PMIDOS want our investors to be the most educated investors in Mexico. We don't want you to put your head in the sand necessarily. No, many of our investors, once they've done some initial research and due diligence, they're happy. They don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time researching more. But we give our customers the ability to meet the owners, to meet our partners, and to meet other investors. So to me, that's our big advantage. And if you want to have safer investments, to me, knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you have, I think the more money you're going to make. So that's what I'd like to end off with is just to say, you know, join the community. You can start with a little bit of money for investing, come out to our events, check out the Zooms, get to know us. And the more you know, the more comfortable you'll be. I think you'll start to realize how you can make better returns, higher returns with lower risk.
yo espero que en esta hora que estuvimos en esta entrevista haya cambiado tu mente de una forma radical, que Darren Weeks te haya enseñado tanto como me ha enseñado a mí en estos últimos 5 años, Para mí fue un gusto estar contigo, Darren, compartir este tiempo, este escenario, de que ayudes a cada vez más personas a conseguir su libertad financiera. Y realmente es un honor poder compartir el tiempo, compartir el lugar con las personas correctas, en el momento correcto y en el lugar correcto. Así que muchísimas gracias, Darren. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you. My pleasure. De nada.
Llegar a un evento con Darren es muy sencillo. Lo único que necesitas hacer es ponerte en contacto conmigo, déjame tu comentario, tus datos. Mi equipo de expertos te va a contactar para registrarte en el próximo evento de Darren Weeks en México, en tu ciudad, y nos vemos pronto ahí.